There are a number of needs-based models of motivation. For example, the well-known Maslow's hierarchy of needs, Clayton Alderfer's existence, relatedness and growth model, and indeed Herzberg's model is fundamentally a needs-based model. But of those, my own favourite is David McClelland's needs theory. And that's what we'll talk about in this video. To my mind, McClelland's 3 needs is the most practical of the models of motivation based on needs for us as working managers. To illustrate it, I'm going to take an example. Let's say that you are a middle manager in an organisation and you need to reallocate personnel. And let's say you need to add 3 people to your sales team. How can you use McClelland's 3 needs to motivate those 3 people to leave their current postings and to join the sales team? Let's assume that none of them is keen initially to get involved in sales and none of them has significant experience in sales. What McClelland says is that we each have 3 primary needs in the workplace. The need for achievement, the need for power, and the need for affiliation. What he goes on to say is that each of us has a different balance of those 3 needs, and for most of us, one of those needs will predominate. The more you get to know the people in your team and the resources available to you, the better you will understand which needs motivate each of those people. If you understand what need primarily drives an individual, then you can tailor the way you motivate them to match their primary need. So let's start with Faisal. Faisal is primarily motivated by a need for achievement. What this means is that he feels that achieving something worthwhile makes him feel uplifted and great and positive and powerful, and therefore he is going to be highly motivated to anything that gives him that sense of achievement. And it's important to note that therefore setting Faisal tasks that he considers too easy are not going to motivate him, because if it's easy, then achieving it doesn't give any great sense of achievement. Likewise, he's also not going to be motivated by any task that he sees as too difficult, because there is too great a risk that he won't achieve anything. Now, luckily, knowing that Faisal is motivated by achievement, you can frame your request for him to join the sales team in terms of achievement, because you can assure him that sales is the achievement-focused part of any business. It's achievement-focused because you are set a task to make a sale and you have a clear achievement when you do make that sale. This is not a straightforward task, so there is definitely a sense of achievement to be had, but it is also one that is entirely manageable. You can set Faisal specific sales targets which are manageable with the training he gets, and then as his skill increases, so you can set him higher and higher targets so that he can work on more and more challenging proposals and sales processes and increase his sense of achievement. But at no point will you put him onto a sales effort that he is not prepared for and therefore able to achieve. So for a salesperson, achievement is a great motivator, and therefore for someone like Faisal who is motivated by achievement, sales is the ideal posting. But what about Hetal? Hetal is not motivated by achievement. She is far more motivated by power. She wants to get things done and she wants to be seen as someone who is important. For her, sales is the ideal role, because what is more important in an organisation than sales? If we don't make sales, the organisation ceases to be able to function. With no revenue, no sales, there's no money and the organisation could go bankrupt. Salespeople are held in high esteem, they are lauded, and you can rise through the ranks within the sales organisation to lead sales teams, eventually become a sales director, and possibly take a seat on the board. For someone who wants power in an organisation, sales is an ideal platform to build that power base. But what about Goran? Goran isn't interested in power, and neither does he want achievement. For him, what's important is affiliation. And affiliation is about building relationships. It's about being part of something, affiliated to something. For Goran, what really motivates him is feeling like he's part of a group. A successful group ideally, but certainly a cohesive group. So how does sales work for Goran? It works very well because, of course, sales isn't a solo effort. Any salesperson who thinks of themselves as a road warrior who goes out and does it all alone is kidding themselves in the modern world. Because sales is a truly collaborative effort. Not only are they sales teams that split up territories and work together to create sales to big clients, but sales is an integrated part of any organisation. You can't be successful in sales unless you work with and understand the work of the marketing team, the product development team, the customer support team. Sales is, if you like, the hub of the ultimate relationship-based network. And then, of course, there's the relationships you build with your clients and your customers and your prospects. So, salespeople have the ability to become almost a part of their client organizations. If you sell well and your client comes to respect your product and like your style as a salesperson, they will include you in their planning and you will feel part of their team too. So if you want affiliation, be part of a sales team. Now, if you've ever worked in sales, or if you know anyone who's worked in sales, you'll quickly be able to establish that I have not lied to Faisal, to Hetal, or to Goran. It is absolutely true that sales is about achievement. It is absolutely true that salespeople rise through the organisation if they're successful and have respect and power. And it's absolutely true that sales is a collaborative effort where you build relationships not just with your clients and your customers, but also with your colleagues around the organisation. I've spoken absolute truth, but I have selected which aspects of the role will appeal to each of my three colleagues. By knowing which needs motivate the most, I select how I present the opportunity and which elements of the opportunity I emphasize. And that, for me, is what makes David McClelland's theory of needs supremely valuable in day-to-day motivation of colleagues at work. My favourite type of management theory are those that explain things that are otherwise confusing. And Frederick Herzberg's two-factor theory is very much that kind of theory. Have you ever noticed that some things that people seem to want a lot don't actually motivate them when they get them? Well, that's what Frederick Herzberg explained with his two-factor theory. He studied a whole range of things that ought to make people feel good at work. And he found that there are different things that either make us satisfied or not satisfied. And he found that motivation is not the opposite of demotivation. Rather, there are two separate scales. There are things that motivate us and there are things that demotivate us. And that's the burden of his work. In an extended series of interviews about what satisfies people at work, he found there were certain things that satisfy us, and he called these motivators. On the other hand, there are certain things that leave us unsatisfied. Yet, if we fix them, people don't suddenly feel motivated, they just stop feeling demotivated. And he called these hygiene factors. And he suggested that if hygiene factors aren't satisfied, then we feel demotivated. Satisfying those hygiene factors restores us back to a balanced, neutral position. On the other hand, once we're in that neutral position, if we get motivators, these make us feel enthusiastic and very positive about our workplace. So let's take a look at the motivators and the hygiene factors that Herzberg identified. Motivators tend to be intrinsic to our relationship to our work. It's about the work we do. Consequently, achieving stuff, making progress, being recognised for the work that we've done, and just the feeling of doing good and worthwhile work, they are all motivating. So too is responsibility, the autonomy to direct our own work and maybe that of others as well, and as a consequence a feeling of advancement, not only in our careers but in our knowledge, in our understanding. Where that advancement comes from, the fruits of our own endeavour, that's motivating too. And so too is emotional, mental, psychological growth, the sense that we are a better person than we were before. Hygiene factors, on the other hand, tend to be external to the actual work that we're doing. In fact, I like the word hygiene factors because a great example is the hygiene of washrooms and of kitchens in our workplace. Nobody is going to sing the praises of their employer just because the washrooms are clean and tidy and the kitchens are well cared for. But as soon as they start to slip in standards and the washrooms are not comfortable and the kitchens are not well cared for, people will soon complain. They will be demotivated very quickly. So hygiene factors include things like corporate policies, the administration, the way the organisation is run and the administration that we're required to do. It's also to do with the way we're supervised and managed. Our salary tends to be a hygiene factor. If we're not paid what we think is fair, and you might like to look at the video on John Stacey Adams' equity theory for this, but if we're not paid what we think is fair and we're not rewarded properly, then we are demotivated. If we're rewarded fairly, we're not motivated, we're just back to that neutral state. And alongside that are working conditions and our status in the workplace. What Herzberg found is that people working in a good basic workplace where the hygiene factors are satisfied will be motivated when you introduce the motivators. On the other hand, if the hygiene factors aren't satisfied, then no amount of motivators are going to make them feel good about working there. So what that tells us is we need to sort out hygiene factors first, make sure that we've got them right, and then build motivation up. Herzberg also talked about KITA factors. K-I-T-A stands for kick in the ass, kick up the backside. He talked about KITA factors in the sense of if, as a manager, as a supervisor, or as an organisation, you don't provide the hygiene factors, you withhold them, you let things slip, it feels to your colleagues, to your employees, to your staff, like a kick in the ass. As you'd expect, there are negative and positive KITA factors. In fact, there are two kinds of negative KITA factors. The first are physical KITA factors, the things that are genuine and as they appear to be. These are genuine, transparent interactions between the staff member who may or may not be feeling demotivated and their supervisor, boss, manager. Examples are critical feedback that makes us feel bad, requests to do work that we don't want to be doing, reprimands, or removal of resources that we need to do our job well. If your boss tells you that other people are getting an upgrade in their technology but you're not, that's a kick in the ass. There are also negative psychological KITA factors, and these are indirect. The communication is in some way manipulative or deceitful. You feel like you can't trust exactly what's being said or implied. Examples are game playing by your boss or other colleagues, or your workplace and the work requirements confronting you with dilemmas, ethical problems, concerns over what the right thing to do, especially where you're not properly supported. And of course, feeling you're being subjected to stress, undue pressure in the workplace where you can't cope and you're not given the resources to cope is a psychological kick in the ass. But there are positive keto factors as well. Positive keto factors are things that have the semblance of motivating you, but all they do is address specific hygiene factor problems. As a result, they can fix demotivation, but they can never make you motivated. Salary adjustments, perks and bonuses, perhaps additional facilities, refreshing washrooms, refreshing kitchens, providing you with equipment that you need to do your job well. All of those give you a positive kick in the ass. Okay, get working. They'll never make you feel great, but they may stop you feeling bad about the workplace. So Herzberg said that feeling motivated and feeling demotivated are not opposites. They're extreme ends of two separate spectrums. The spectrum from feeling unmotivated to motivated, and the spectrum from feeling unmotivated to demotivated. If you understand that, you will understand why, despite the best efforts you give to motivating people, it won't make them feel good if the hygiene factors are not all in place. Arguably the best known model of motivation, and the one that many managers know first, is the model developed by Abraham Maslow. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's super well known. It's important because of the background it provides to many other models of motivation, and therefore we're going to look at it in this video. Abraham Maslow was not a management theorist. He wasn't interested in management as we are. He was a psychologist interested in humanistic psychology. He coined the phrase positive psychology. What he was fundamentally interested in was explaining human behaviour. And the model that he developed for how we are motivated as human beings is one that has been co-opted into the management world as the base for much of our understanding of human motivation and needs. Maslow's theory was that human needs could be grouped together into broad classes, and these could be arranged into a hierarchy, such that some were more fundamental, more basal needs, and others were higher, more elevated needs. And the idea that he had was that once we had satisfied our basal needs, we turned our attention to the next needs up in the hierarchy, and we work our way up, and our motivation is driven to fulfill unmet needs higher up in the hierarchy beyond where we have met all our needs. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is often represented as either a pyramid or as a ladder. The pyramid representation is by far the most common, with the basal, or sometimes described as deficiency needs, at the bottom, and the higher or growth needs at the top. Maslow's original model had 5 levels to it. The bottom level, physiological needs, sometimes referred to as survival needs, the fundamental needs that our physiology and psychology requires that we meet. These include warmth, shelter, and food. We will strive to meet those needs because they are very much about our survival. And when we've met those needs, our next need is to maintain our survival. So the second layer in the hierarchy is safety and security. This is the level that gives us a sense of certainty and confidence in the future. And in the workplace, this is all about having a stable, secure job and a decent salary or wage. Next up are our social needs, often referred to as belonging. But this includes the need for affection and love and relationships. At this level, we need to have a group with which we can associate that has affection for us and respects us. You can sort of think of this in evolutionary terms by thinking back to our ancient ancestors. The first thing they would have needed was a cave to live in and some food to eat for the night. And then they would have needed the security of knowing that they could return to that cave and that they could hunt consistently. And then they want to have people around them, a tribe. The fourth level is referred to as esteem needs. Once you're a part of a tribe, you want a place in that tribe. You want people to respect you. Often, we now divide what Maslow described as esteem needs into two levels, the lower of which is group esteem, the need to fit in with a group and to have the respect of the group, and eventually to rise to a role within that group. And in the workplace, we see that as the drive for promotion, which isn't necessary for safety or security, but it is necessary to satisfy that need to get the esteem of the group, because promotion is a mark of how much our organisation respects us. So too is salary. Beyond a base salary that will maintain our needs, those increments in salary and those bonuses are marks of group esteem. But another part of esteem that we now tend to separate into a separate level is self-esteem. It's not enough for us to know that the group values us and respects us. It's also important that we value and respect ourselves. That sense of self-esteem, self-confidence, self-respect is important. The sixth level in Maslow's hierarchy is what he called self-actualization, the drive to be the best we possibly can, to fulfill our entire potential. And this tends to be the things that we do outside of the workplace, like our hobbies, our social activities, our community contributions. These tend to be spiritual or personal fulfillment things. We study in order to grow and learn more, and that's self-actualization. And to the extent that self-actualization can, of course, happen in the workplace studying, gaining qualifications, certifications, watching videos like this is part of self-actualization. And so is building a reputation beyond your organisation, your personal brand, and your industry eminence. These are all about self-actualization, being recognised as an expert, not only within your organisation, but outside it. Now, whilst Maslow's theory is very well known, it's actually not based on a huge amount of research, although it was in order to gain some kind of research evidence to back up this theory that Maslow turned to the workplace, and that's what has brought it into our awareness as managers as a workplace model of motivation. And certainly more modern theories, whilst they look superficially very different, starting with Clayton Alderfer's ERG theory and moving on to Ryan and Deci's self-determination theory, these more modern theories, they look different, but they hark back to it. They have the elements of the pyramid. I think the things that have changed fundamentally is that whilst Maslow seemed to imply that we won't turn our attention to a higher level until we fully fulfilled a lower level, we later have realised that that's not true. We can worry about multiple levels at the same time. They all motivate us and they all provide us with a sense that we need to not only fulfill those needs, but secure them. How does Maslow's hierarchy of needs work in the modern workplace? Well, I think it's as well to recognise that if you're not paying someone enough, no amount of motivation in terms of self-actualization or esteem is going to make them feel comfortable in a place where they can't earn enough money. But it doesn't really explain why people worry about money when they've got enough. On the other hand, if we think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs carefully, we can see that there are these separate needs and they do persist together. And if we don't feel we are advancing up that hierarchy, then we'll feel there's something wrong with the progression we're making in our lives and our careers. So it is well worth having a good base understanding of Maslow's hierarchy of needs as a manager so that you can use that to frame the more sophisticated thinking that you'll go through as to how to motivate individuals in your workplace. Please give us a thumbs up if you like this video. By the way, lots of people wonder how to pronounce Abraham Maslow's name. Lots of people call it Maslow, and some people, recognizing that it's a Russian or Eastern European name, will pronounce the W as a V, Maslow. One of his assistants has gone on record to state that Maslow himself pronounced it Maslow. In 1969, Clayton Alderfer developed a theory of motivation which is superficially similar to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But it is a different theory, it does have some different characteristics, and it certainly has something useful to help us understand motivation in the workplace. Alderfer suggested that we have 3 primary needs in the workplace, and all of them must be satisfied simultaneously, unlike Maslow's hierarchy where we satisfy one at a time. And the 3 needs that Alderfer suggested were existence, relatedness, and growth, giving his model its name, the ERG theory. Existence is very similar to the lower levels of Maslow's hierarchy. It's our feeling that we are safe, we are secure, we have our basic needs met. And indeed, it also carries that important sense of autonomy, the fact that we have some measure of control over our lives. Relatedness recognizes our social nature as human beings, our need to build relationships with people around us. In the workplace, relationships are mightily important. And so we need to be able to build relationships and maintain those relationships. And finally, growth, which is similar to the top levels of Maslow's hierarchy and its idea of self-actualization. Growth is about learning, developing, feeling that when we leave work today, we're just that little bit more than we were when we arrived. And by the end of the year, we've developed and moved on in our career and in our skill set. So it's easy to recognize those 3 simple levels as being true motivators. But they're not levels in the way that Maslow had them. They are 3 things that need to be simultaneously met. Consequently, we'll only ever be truly motivated if we can meet all 3 of those needs. And therefore, what Alderfer suggested was that where people aren't motivated in the workplace, it's because there is a gap in one of those 3 needs. Either we don't feel safe and secure, autonomous and able to make our own choices, or we don't feel that we're able to build and maintain strong relationships, or we feel the relationships we have are damaging, toxic, or in other ways unsatisfactory, or we feel stuck, not progressing in our work, no longer able to grow. And what Alderfer went on to say is that where we can't satisfy all 3, we turn our attention to the lowest needs that we can satisfy and fixate on them. Consequently, if we can't grow, we become over-fixated on either salary and the existence type needs, or on relationships, and find ourselves socializing and social life taking over our ability to be effective at work. If the relationships are failing, then we do rely very much on our existence needs. And if our existence needs aren't properly met, then we feel lost, we feel insecure, and consequently can't focus on our work. Why this is really useful in my mind is that it allows us to kind of diagnose where someone's lack of motivation is by their actions. If, for example, they seem to be over-socializing, gossipy, spending time with friends, coming into work late because they've been out late the previous evening, then they're focusing too much on the relatedness level, which suggests they feel they're not growing. If they're fixated on basic conditions, trying to exert control perhaps inappropriately on their own work life, if they are constantly moaning about salary or the equipment they're given, then that suggests that relatedness is the issue. And if they seem wholly demotivated, then you have to fix that existence-based level and start to look at their sense of security, their sense of autonomy, and their responsibility at work. Once you've identified what the problem is, the right thing to do is to sit down with that colleague, discuss with them, find out the finer details, and work with them to create a plan for how you can fix it and how you can contribute and how they can contribute, and then work that plan to get them back to that healthy balance of existence, relatedness, and growth. Self-determination theory is a psychological and highly modern theory about motivation, which has a lot to teach us as working managers. So in this video, I want to introduce you to self-determination theory as developed by Richard Ryan and Edward Deci. Ryan and Deci's work focuses on two things. Firstly, on the dominant role of intrinsic motivation in helping us to feel motivated in the workplace and in life in general. And secondly, on the conditions under which extrinsic motivation can help to motivate us. So before we go any further, let's define our terms and understand what extrinsic and intrinsic motivation are. Extrinsic motivation is motivation that comes from outside you. It's imposed conditions, it's offers of reward. Intrinsic motivation comes from inside you. It's about your drive for fulfillment and growth. What Ryan and Deci found is that individuals have an intrinsic drive towards action, doing things, and towards growth, getting better at doing the things they do. But they also found that we need to be nurtured by our external environment in order to be able to fulfill this potential. It's our social context that provides extrinsic motivation and, of course, inhibitors. And there can be a tension between an active individual trying to do things and the social context within which they operate. What Ryan and Deci found is that we have three inherent needs. These are innate. We're born with them. And Ryan and Deci call these psychological nutrients. They nourish our psychological souls. Fulfillment of all three of these needs is essential if we are to find ourselves able to operate effectively in life and to feel a sense of well-being. As soon as one of these needs is compromised, feel a sense of demotivation. And the most important of these needs is autonomy. Autonomy is our ability to make our own choices. It's not as strong as independence because as an autonomous individual, I don't have to be independent from other people. I just have to be able to make my own decisions within the context of the people around me. One of the things that self-determination theory researchers have found is that if you try to use extrinsic motivators, the promise of rewards, for example, to try to motivate things that are actually intrinsically motivated, what you'll find is that motivation ironically goes down. And the reason motivation goes down is because feeling that there is a promise of a reward robs us of a sense of autonomy. We're not completely in control. Someone else is offering a reward. Consequently, this leads to the often repeated and very important finding that bonus systems for knowledge workers and highly skilled professionals fail. They fail because those professionals who would be motivated by the intrinsic rewards of being in control of their work and of developing higher levels of expertise and competence feel that their reward system is robbing them of some measure of autonomy, of some measure of control. competence is the second of Ryan and Deci's psychological nutrients. This is our ability to control our outcomes through skill, through knowledge, through expertise. It's about having confidence. It's about being able to do a good job. One of the most important things to know about the competence dimension is the impact that unexpected, unsolicited feedback can have on our intrinsic motivation. If you give someone unsolicited, unexpected, positive feedback about their performance, it boosts their motivation massively. But likewise, if you drop in some unexpected, negative feedback, that will cause a dip in intrinsic motivation, because that feedback goes right to the heart of our belief in our competence. The third and final of the intrinsic needs within self-determination theory is relatedness. This is our connection to other people and our sense of security with that connection, and the sense that we are part of a community and we are cared for. If you've seen some of our other videos, you might recognize this triad of autonomy, competence, and relatedness as being in some way related to Clayton Alderfer's existence, relatedness, and growth theory, and to the work of David McClelland, where he looked at the importance of achievement, affiliation, and power, where achievement is in some way related to competence, affiliation clearly is related to relatedness, and power to autonomy. But where self-determination theory departs from these is the emphasis it places on the importance of intrinsic motivation. And it also focuses us on the interrelatedness of these three elements. Without the relatedness component and the feeling of security within a nurturing social context, then we don't feel safe in asserting our autonomy, and we don't feel fully competent. Often, if we don't feel that psychological security, we can fight back by acting in a controlling manner in order to assert a higher level of autonomy, and that can be destructive behaviour. Self-determination theory also tells us that we don't respond well to extrinsic motivators unless we feel confident in our relatedness and in a nurturing social environment. If we do have that level of confidence in our social environment, however, imposed rules and regulations don't rob us of our autonomy. We submit to them willingly, and in making that choice to submit to a social construct that we feel safe within, we are exerting our autonomy. Without that safe social environment, however, the rules of the organisation feel like they are controlling us, and again, in order to reassert our autonomy, we will rebel against them. You'll be able to re-examine some of these ideas with a different frame around them when we look at Daniel Pink and his idea of Motivation 3.0. But I'd like to sum up this brief exploration of self-determination theory by re-emphasising the importance of giving over to the people who work with you autonomy in their choices, the ability to develop and exercise their competence, and build good relationships and feel secure in their social environment. And the great thing about this as a motivational theory is these are three levers of motivation that you have entirely at your disposal as a supervisor or a line manager or as a day-to-day leader. You don't need to be able to control the big extrinsic levers of motivation like salary, reward, remuneration, because those are not the levers that work for most of us in most circumstances. Creating a strong, nurturing team environment and giving people the opportunity to make their own choices and to exercise their expertise is more than enough to create great motivation in your workplace. Please give us a thumbs up if you like this video. There's loads more great management courses content to come, so please subscribe to our channel and hit the bell so you don't miss any of it. I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video, and in the meantime, keep learning.